Welcome to your virtual winter retreat. The reason why I developed this retreat is because this time frame between especially Christmas and the New Year can be one that brings a lot of upheaval. There are a lot of people who struggle this time of year or any time in winter because they're reflecting on the past and they might be apprehensive or nervous about the future. So I thought a grounding retreat that is based in understanding and connecting with our winter energy, basically, would be something that could bring us some healing. If you're new here, my name is Michelle Pava, and you're listening to the Muddy Path podcast. So today is day 1 of 5 days of our winter retreat, and we're going to be talking about the 4 foundations of mindfulness. Now, if you already have a meditation or mindfulness practice, this could be used to enhance it. If you're struggling with mindfulness and meditation, or you have anxiety, stress, all of that, then you will probably find this helpful to deepen your practice and also help you to get where you need to be. So we're going to talk about the first foundation right now, and that is mindfulness of body. Now, the interesting thing about the body and mindfulness of the body is that it's not just about acknowledging that here we are sitting or standing or reclining and we are in our body. It means that we recognize that the body is not one solid unified thing, but rather a collection of parts. This is also why we have specialists within the medical community, right? So we have nails and teeth and bones, heart, and just a lot of parts. And each is actually a small body within itself that is located within a larger entity that we call the body. So this is interesting because we often think of the body as our body, but there is no real one space because it's not unified. So what we think of as ourselves, yourself or myself, is really selflessness because there's not actually one space. It's not one unified space. So it does experience injury, illness, and death, and the body is unsatisfactory as a source of lasting happiness then, right? So we can grow old and we can become more limited. So when we recognize that we are selfless, then mindfulness helps us to recognize that the body is not permanent and can often be unsatisfactory to us at any given moment. So if we focus on selflessness, we know the body as it really is. We have to think about the body as a lot of entities within an entity. So think about if you go to the grocery store and you grab some apples. If you try to grab all of the apples that you want at once, you might end up with quite a mess, apples rolling all over the place. But when we are grabbing an apple and putting it into our cart or into our bag, we are mindful of touching each apple in a way that creates balance and so that we don't disrupt the whole. And that's how we have to think of our bodies. We have to acknowledge that the body is a lot of different parts, a lot of different entities, and we have to be mindful of the different entities within the body. And so we can't just think of the body as just one space, one unified space, and think, oh, I'm healthy because today I woke up and I'm walking around. But really think about it. Do you brush your teeth long enough? Are you washing your hands? How's your skin? Is your bone health okay? You have to look at the big picture. And in the big picture, we have to acknowledge that there's lots of little micro moments within the big picture. And that's what mindfulness of body is all about. At the same time, we are not our body. So if something happens and you have to have a leg amputated, or a tooth falls out, or you have to have a tooth pulled, or your hair sheds, which everyone has that, right? So if that happens, are we losing ourselves? No, we are still who we are because we're actually selfless. It's not about our body. So this is what I want you to first acknowledge in one of the foundations of mindfulness. I want you to imagine your feelings now as a leaf on a stream. And the leaf comes down the stream, you see the leaf, it passes by, and we learn to just acknowledge that the leaf is not going to stay with us. We don't feel like that leaf is going to stay. So we acknowledge that it's just going to pass us by. And that's what we need to acknowledge with our feelings. So the second foundation is mindfulness of feelings. So here's the reality, without sounding too negative here, all feelings are going to be unsatisfactory, even joy and happiness, because pleasant feelings don't last forever. So the last time you were really excited about something, that didn't stay for weeks on end, right? And even unpleasant feelings or feelings that are painful seem to be something that we don't want. So regardless of whether the feeling is unsatisfactory in our minds or satisfactory in our minds, all of them are actually unsatisfactory. But that doesn't mean we have to feel bad about them. They're not actually unsatisfactory as much as they are fluid. So when we recognize this truth, knowing that feelings are fluid, we are more mindful then of our feelings. Because if we just take them for granted that they're going to be here and we're just reacting to what is coming up within us, then we are being passive in our living. But being mindful of our feelings means we are being intentional and recognizing our feelings and trying to really tap into why those feelings might be there. So that is the second foundation, and that is the mindfulness of feeling. Now, our mind is similar to the body, where we think that our mind is a thing, just like our body. We say our body, and we think of it as one space. We tend to think of our mind as one space as well. So going into the third foundation of mindfulness and meditation, we have to think of mindfulness of mind. And mindfulness of mind means that we recognize that the mind isn't just one thing. In fact, there's many minds within the mind. We know this now also scientifically, that there's different areas of the brain that create or allow different types of processes. So the mind is actually a set or a series of processes, and it's also very fluid. So for our mind, there could be different information being sent to us or that we're perceiving from what we see or hear or taste, what we touch, and also from what we're feeling inside, as well as what's happening in our environment, the external world. We are not really just a thinking person. We also are storing memories, images. We can hearken back to daydreams or even dreams that we've had at night. We can pay attention to the way thoughts arise or how long they seem to remain present or the kind of thoughts that maybe pass us by. And we can learn that all of our mind is made up of a lot of different processes, and they all work together, leading from one thought to another to another. And then because of this, we can get a little bit of detachment and understand that we are not our thoughts. We are not just our mind, because the mind is a series of basically minds within the mind. And it's all happening for a lot of different reasons. Like, think of it as basically a big machine. There's a lot of different cogs. And so we recognize that these cogs are creating what we think of as this one piece, the mind. And we get to know the mind as it really is when we practice the mindfulness of the mind. So when you're struggling with meditation or mindfulness or anxiety or stress, we can recognize then there are a lot of different facets of the mind, and maybe we need to tap into our internal resources, or maybe we need to focus more on the external world, our atmosphere, our environment, or we need to hearken back to the memories, or we need to look forward to something that we can imagine in the future, or we need to tap into creativity. So as we become more connected to our mind and understanding all of the different options there are within the mind, and how the mind isn't just one thing, it's just what we call the collection of processes, we can become so much more empowered and more in control of really this machine that we have, that we can imagine it as a machine with this miracle that we have, where we have a lot of different areas to tap into to create empowerment. Lastly, the last foundation is mindfulness of dhammas. Now, dhammas mean teachings, but I don't want you to think that it only means Buddhist teachings. So, what Buddha taught, though, was that not only should we look inward, but we should also seek truth outside of ourselves. So, really, what that comes down to in a nutshell is that we acknowledge that we're not perfect and that we should continually grow. And also to honor that we go through different stages of birth, growth, decay, and death. And so that we have to honor that we need to be in touch with wherever we are in our seasons. So growing is something that we can do in any season. And so it's important for us to get as in touch with ourselves as possible so that every season that we have is as positive as it could be. And only when we begin to really search inside of ourselves and honor that we need to continually grow and learn are we actually practicing mindfulness of Dhammas. So not all insight and inner awareness or inner peace is where it's at. We need to also look outside of ourselves. We can't be naive enough to think that just being in touch with how we feel is enough. That would be very self-centered. So being connected and interconnected to the world around us and seeking truth outside of ourselves is also very important. If you'd like to take this day one of your retreat a step further, go to my website and you're going to see the blog post named The Foundations of Mindfulness, and you're going to go ahead and do those activities. So I hope this has helped you. And if it has, please think about subscribing, giving it 5 stars, and connecting at muddypath.org. Thank you and have a beautiful day.